Scott wiping tears from his eyes as his mother made one last attempt to save his life. The jury is expected to hear closing arguments today and then begin their deliberations. But can the six-woman, six-man panel forget last week's powerful testimony from Lacey's mother? Let's talk about it with Ginny, Walia, criminal defense attorney, and B.J. Bernstein, former prosecutor. Good morning to you both. And if we could take a look, Ginny, to you first at some of the quote-unquote defense high points, and one of them is the high number of witnesses. Now, I've been hearing people all week saying that that was a mistake, that it sort of put the jurors, some of them, to sleep, that it was unnecessary. Why might that actually have been a good thing for the defense?
I think that the defense attorney at the beginning of it warned the jury that we have to do this, bear with us, it's going to be boring. The defense strategy in putting on so many witnesses was to put a distance between Sharon Rocha's testimony and when the jury gets the case for deliberation. Clearly they want to put a distance between her testimony and their deliberation so that they can forget something about this testimony. And they put Jackie Peterson last for her testimony's recency effect.
Let's talk about Jackie Peterson with B.J. Defense high point. It certainly seemed to bring out some emotions from the jurors that maybe some of the other character witnesses didn't, but it is his mom. What mother doesn't love her son?
Precisely, and everyone, and the jury even knew that that they've been building up to this. They've had boring witness after boring witness, from, talking about his golf game, for goodness sake, to how he would, when he was a waiter, and talking about long ago his past life. It's also interesting that Jackie Peterson in her testimony also talked about him as a child, talked about him a long time ago, but really didn't focus as to who her son is now.
Yeah, nothing.
So yes, it's effective, but not, not quite what I think we were all wanting to see from her.
Right, not too current. Back to you, Ginny. Low-key strategy, what exactly do we mean by that?
It means that they put on a very low-key case. It wasn't very controversial. They did not put on Scott Peterson clearly because they want to preserve this case for an appeal. Scott may not have had anything to say about his innocence, but he certainly would have something to say about whether he deserves the death penalty.
All right.
But this is a strategy so that they can go forward and appeal the case successfully.
Let's talk about some of the prosecution high points, and B.J., back to you. Stressing the timing of the attack, why might that have been effective?
Oh, absolutely, because here you are, you're at Christmas time with his wife pregnant with his own child, and knowing that. And that is just a devastating fact. And remember here that it's going to be stressed during closing argument today that under the law, you do have to talk about the law here, not just emotion, there has to be proved an aggravating circumstance. And here in the indictment, the aggravating circumstances is the death of one or more people. So discussing not only the death of Lacey, but this child is a critical part of the prosecution's case, obviously.
Ginny, what about that second point, painting a true picture of Scott? Was that done even more so by the prosecution than it was in the earlier phase of the trial?
I think partly they didn't paint Scott Peterson. I think they needed to go more into it. Jackie Peterson talked about her own upbringing and how her father was murdered, but that really has no effect on Scott. And unless it somehow traumatized Scott, it can be considered a mitigating factor. But I think that who Scott has been in his latest years was not so put on.
B.J., one last one for you, and this last prosecution high point, Sharon Rocha's testimony, and I think the question still is, was there anything that we heard at this trial that was more powerful than that?
Absolutely not, and that will be the closing argument today. The prosecution, they're not going to have to spend the full 2 hours. They're going to focus, because there is no other words than saying, there could have been a divorce, and that just gets right to the heart of this.
Cuts to the chase, yep. All right. B.J. and Ginny, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
John?